Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Esoteric Atlanta with my good friend, Cindy. You guys know her. She's been on the channel before, and this is probably the most requested video I've had so far. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to put one out myself over this topic because of all the other research I've had to do. So I'm so grateful that Cindy is here today for us to take a deep dive into the energetic body as we move into this new awakening, this new timeline, if you will. So many people are starting to realize that deep inside in our spirit, we've had the power all along to understand things, not to sound like the Wizard of Oz or anything, but we have had the power all along with inside of us. And so you guys have requested a lot for me to go over some of these things with you guys. And Cindy is the expert. She owns Sacred Garden Yoga in Marietta, Georgia, where I teach on Sunday mornings. She just finished teaching a class, believe it or not, because she looks gorgeous. I don't look that good when I'm done teaching, but Cindy does. And yeah, you got some workshops and stuff coming up that we're going to put down in the description box below as well. And I know that people can contact you through Zoom too, right? For appointments and stuff. Perfect.
Yes, I absolutely do stuff through Zoom. Obviously here, if you're local in the yoga studio, but yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started, Cindy. Now, we will get to the chakras, guys. Don't worry. But I think for starters, we are going to talk about intuition and gut feeling and trauma and fear and how to not confuse the two. Do you want to get started on that and explaining that to people?
Absolutely. The intuition, I feel, is the voice of our higher self, the voice of our soul. And it's usually going to lead us, or not usually, pretty much always going to lead us in the direction of our highest success, not just for ourselves, but also for our family and the work that we do and the community that we belong to. But it is very easy to confuse that voice, because we have so many other voices that go on in our head, with the one true voice of your heart and your intuition, your sacred self, your higher self, your Holy Spirit, whatever word that you want to call your connection with something that's bigger than you, but it's also inside of you. What you said was totally correct, is that the power is inside of us, that we have the capacity to tap into, the energy inside of us is huge. It's humongous already. You know, some people feel like they need to tap into energy outside of yourself, which you can find some good, interesting, funky stuff out there as well. But as the saying goes, as above, so below. You have that same wisdom inside of you as well. It just depends on what path you want to take. Sometimes at first we delve within the framework of the cosmos and try to understand that to be able to understand ourselves better. But in the end, it's going to take you back to here.
Yeah.
And the understanding that you are actually a fractal of the universe, a fractal meaning that you are a complete piece of the universe. And so you hold all the wisdom that you need. So your intuition directs you to that communication within your body, because your intuition communicates with you through your body. It has to, as long as we're in the incarnation and in form.
Right.
But since we are in a human body and in form, we also have things like fear and trauma responses because of experiences that we've been through, not just in this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes as well, if that's something that you believe in, that holds within the body. It holds within the cellular structure of our body. And that fear can come through just as powerfully, if not more powerfully, sometimes in our intuition. And then it's a matter of, okay, how can I tell the difference? Which is what we're talking about, what we're wanting to talk about here. The intuition is, again, it's the voice of the higher part of you, and everyone experiences it differently. Everyone experiences intuition differently. So I would say, first of all, is get in tune with how you experience your intuition the most. We were talking about before this, the clairs, the different clairs, the clair senses.
Yeah.
Right. And the clairs are the one that we're most common. Well, we know the most about is the clairvoyance, like being able to see. And you have others as well. You have clairaudience, which is the ability to hear beyond. I'm talking about being able to see beyond just what you see, like I see this tree or I see this fence, but also being able to perceive and see like energy and vibrations and things like that. The other one is clairaudience. There's also clairsentience, feeling, which is me. I'm a feeler. There is clairalience, that's your nose being able to smell. The sense is taste, and the cognizance is knowing. That's my two big ones are I sense, like I feel, and I know. It's just suddenly I know something, and then I know it, and I know it's true.
Yeah. And the smelling thing we talked before, it's like you hear people say all the time, they'll smell a scent that was like their grandmother, or like they'll smell cigar smoke that's not around them, but their grandfather smoked cigars, or their grandmother's perfume, but it's not really there, but it's a smell that other people are not going to smell. But if you have that ability, you're going to pick up on that. And that's pretty, I mean, they're all actually, I know clairvoyance is probably the most common, but it's interesting because you were saying, and I believe this, that we all have at least one of these, right? There's at least one thing that everyone's going to have to be able to see what's not necessarily there, but it's to connect to that inner understanding, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you actually probably have the capacity for all of them. I think we all do, but there's going to be some that come in more strongly than others. Like some people are going to be natural. I'm not like a huge seer. I see things in my mind's eye,
right?
Like and through my imagination. If I'm working energetically on people, I might get images. So maybe that's the way the clairvoyance comes in through me. But then there are some people who very clearly see like auras. They see auras around people, or they see entities or beings that have already passed on. You know, they see the aura around trees. And that's, you know, that's a pretty cool one to have for sure. But if you don't have that, it doesn't mean that you're not intuitive though.
Right.
It means that it might be coming through you in a different kind of a way.
And I think that the universe, the higher creator, God, whatever you call that being, is one of love. And so sometimes the ability we're given is the one that isn't going to freak us out the most, if that makes sense. Because for some people, seeing something, that's going to terrify them. And so, but you do see it with kids. How many stories do we see of kids, like videos of him in their crib, and they're like chit-chatting with something that's not even there, that we can't see, right? But then we grow up and we lose that because we kind of get disconnected and discombobulated from that intuitive understanding that we're born with.
Yeah, well, it's because especially when we grew up, it wasn't necessarily encouraged for us to develop that part of ourselves. So it does get shut down, or it doesn't get fully developed or cultivated until maybe later on in your years and you decide that you want to fully develop it again. That makes a big difference. We can very easily shut them down because at some point, again, it was discouraged.
Wasn't accepted.
It wasn't accepted, or you were belittled or made fun of or something like that because of it. And all that, your clairs are sensitive to how you feel about them.
Right.
If that makes sense. So it's easy to shut them down. And then we do get disconnected. And right now, where we're at the age where we have so much information coming at us from so many different points of view, you know, it's time for us to wake that up so that we can hear from the voice of the place that's going to guide us again to our highest success, and to, you know, to our abundance, and to our health, and to just being supported in this world. With so much information coming at us now, I think it's so important to be able to develop this intuitive part of you. So one way is to begin to recognize how your intuition works through you specifically.
So what would be an example of someone figuring that out? Would they just have to like start observing themselves in moments of quiet or
Yes,
the world, pay attention?
Yeah, pay attention. You can sit quietly, close your eyes, tune in with yourself, ask. I mean, all you have to do most of the time is ask. Just ask. You have so many powers that be in spirit and angel guides that are waiting for you to ask and to open yourself up to them. And you sit and ask and they're like, oh,
finally something to do. That's so funny. There's even a verse in the Bible: ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. Like, it's all there. And it's so funny you say that, because we have been on this channel like trying to like break through the truth of everything. And I've been trying to figure out like what planets really are, because we know that what we've been told might not be accurate. So like, what are planets? What are these messengers? And I've been asking all these people and no one can really answer me. And I was just recording the other day part 3 of our Apocalypse of Abraham from our missing book of the Bible, and it flat out tells you. And I was like, I started laughing reading and I was like, oh my God, there it is. Yes. So it's true. They're waiting for you to ask these questions. You have to ask though.
But you do have to ask, because they're not going to force themselves upon your free will.
Right.
So asking for more clarity, for more guidance in how you experience the voice of, or the communication of your higher self. Mm-hmm. Close your eyes, you can practice it, make that connection, and you can, once you close your eyes and center yourself, open your eyes and notice what pops out. Like, look around you. Does the vision pop out for you the most, or do you suddenly get a whiff of something? These are small little practices that you can do to begin to understand this part of yourself. And then it's a matter of, continually developing that.
Right. Now, so we talked a little bit, and I know Tamara comes on the channel too. She always says, the difference between fear and your gut intuition is that fear makes sense, or the gut intuition doesn't make sense all of the time. But for people who don't understand, and I think sometimes for me, and Cindy, you might be the same way, I think I forget, because we work in the yoga world, we're constantly working with like trauma in the body and trauma responses. When we say trauma response, I want people watching to understand this doesn't necessarily mean something big and bad that happened to you. This could be something very, very minimal that you might not even remember, but your body has recorded. So can you explain to people, like in layman's term, what is a trauma response? And do you believe that we all have it? We all have certain trauma responses.
If you're in human form, yes. Yeah. If you're in human form, and then if you lived on Earth, on planet for even a minuscule amount of time, most likely you've gotten inoculated with something that can very well be created a kind of fear or trauma response within you. Your body absolutely remembers everything. I kind of see it as like this mini Akashic record. It's like your Akashic records. An Akashic record is basically like if you think of the Akashic record, the big Akashic records, it pretty much stores all the information of the whole entire universe and the history of the planets and all that stuff. Well, I think our body is an Akashic record too. At least I feel that, and especially with our own experiences. And again, not just from this incarnation in this body, but also from past lives and also ancestral.
Absolutely.
In other words, what your grandparents or your great grandparents, or goes way back, when your body holds the history and the remembrance of all that. So a trauma response can, it's not only from this lifetime in this body, but it also carries over from other experience, other lifetimes, and other family members.
Right.
And it basically, let's say something, and you're right, it doesn't have to be a huge thing, especially, well, let's just say if you're a child. For a child to get fearful, it doesn't necessarily take a whole lot.
Right.
It might take more as an adult because you've developed that part of yourself, but a child who isn't fully, cognitively developed, they don't understand the world in the same way that an adult does, which it can be a good thing, but it can also be, the children are more like sponges that way.
Right.
Let's put it that way. And the children also take, if you have a child, you know this, they'll take anything personally. They take everything personally. Anything, because they don't know any better yet. I can't remember what the age is before they're really able to differentiate and
Right.
say that the world doesn't revolve around me. But children really do. I mean, they really do think that the world revolves around them.
Yeah.
And if something negative happens in any way, they'll take it personally. They'll internalize it in some way. And that could be a big thing, or it could be a small little thing. Again, that might not be that big of a deal to an adult, but it can be a very big deal to a child. And then we develop an idea about that. In other words, let's say we do something, and let's just take the example of a child, of a trauma response that would have been cultivated, let's say within this lifetime, within this body. You're a child and you did something like you were singing and dancing and prancing around and you were all free and happy. But then your parents, who might have not been in a very good mood at that point, tells you, shut up, be quiet. You're making too much noise, or you're causing too much commotion. A single response like that can shut down that part of yourself. Well, that says, oh my gosh, well, I shouldn't sing, I shouldn't be free, I shouldn't dance, I shouldn't twirl around, because if I do that, it's not acceptable.
Right. So it's
and then that
causes the stress response.
Exactly. And then that creates like a shutting down in a way of that part of yourself. And then that also creates a whole belief system. It'll create a whole thought construct that says, don't do that anymore, because if you do that, then you're going to get in trouble, or you're going to be made fun of, or whatever words that you pick. Right. And then that thought process becomes a program that runs in your mind. And you didn't even you might have not, as an adult, you look back, you might not even remember that you made that. I was
about to say, yeah. But the information is still there. The emotional memory is still there. And I think so many they say that you spend your adult life trying to get over your childhood, but I think a lot of adults have those type of situations that have created a certain behavior that they don't even remember. And as an adult, you can look back at a situation like that and be like, oh yeah, my parent was in a bad mood that day. It had nothing to do with me. But as a kid, that doesn't register. And so
you take it personally. Yeah, you take it personally because that's the only thing that you know how to do. You did something wrong. And since you did something wrong, and we're usually wanting to please our adults or our parents, we'll change our behavior. But then that emotion also, you create that construct, and then that emotion can get frozen in time almost. Like if it hurt your feelings. And children also aren't very good always at processing their emotions, unless you just let them rage. Like a child who just kind of rages and lets it out. That helps to release the response from the body. Right. But again, children aren't taught to just let their emotions be. We usually tell them, well, you have to suppress them, or you need to not make them so wild or crazy, because it's again, it's not acceptable. Not culturally acceptable. Yeah. It's not cool. Not that they should be raging in the middle of the grocery store necessarily, but a child will naturally have a response to want to release. Yeah. But we don't, again, that's not necessarily encouraged either. Right. So you have something happened, something traumatic. And again, it can just be something small that happens. And then you aren't given the ability to process that emotion. You'll create a whole thought process, a whole thought construct around it. And if the emotion isn't fully processed, you can also hold that within your body. And it doesn't disappear. That's another thing. All it does is it suppresses and it gets stuck in places within your body, but it doesn't ever just disappear. That's what we wish that it would do. That it would just completely go away. We never have to deal with it again. But unfortunately, since your body is it stores everything, it's going to hold it for you. But but it's doing it on purpose, because in essence, your higher self wants you to be whole again. And it wants you to be able to come back again and to reclaim those parts of you that you might have stuffed away or tucked away somewhere, or emotion that's stuck or frozen in your body, so that it can release and you can feel whole again. But it's not going to, your higher self is never going to like just take pieces away from you.
Right.
You can fragment them yourself.
Yeah, that's all you. That's not your higher self. That's all you.
Yes, you fragment it yourself, but it's still contained within the framework of your body, your heart, your soul, your energetic body, if that makes sense.
So with trauma responses, what tends to happen is, regardless of whether the trauma again was big, and y'all know what we're talking about, we have to be careful on YouTube because of censorship, but we know what big traumas are. Y'all all know that. But then the small traumas is that these patterns that from this story we've created around this then start to kind of dictate how we behave in the world, which is what you're talking about, understanding the difference between this fear response or trauma response versus the actual intuition response, which is not a part of the fear response.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the trauma, your fear response, it starts to make up like this egoic part of you that wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you protected and safe, which that's not a bad thing.
Right.
So when we're starting to go back in and understand like the traumas and the fears within us, we want to go in compassionately and understanding that they were designed to protect us and to keep us feeling safe. But the problem with that is that it will keep you in the same little box where it's hard for you to grow out of that. And when you do want to grow out of that box, let's say you get an intuitive hit that says to, go start this YouTube channel, or go offer that workshop or that class that you want to do, or, start your, your Instagram, or whatever that thing is, especially something that really puts you out there and gets you out there in front of people. Your intuition, you'll get a hit from your intuition, and it will feel good and it will feel fresh. And by the way, that's one of the ways that you can tell the difference between an intuitive and a fear response is your intuition will be anchored in the present moment. It will say, oh yeah, go do this right now.
Right.
And then a lot of times what will happen, you'll get this idea, this moment of inspiration and revelation that can break you out of this small little box that you've put yourself in. And a short while later, the fear response will come in and say, oh my gosh, no, don't start that YouTube channel, because then all these people are going to see you and they're going to think you're completely crazy, and they're going to think you're nuts. And that's danger. Because you have to understand that responds, or it interprets through the body and through your mind as dangerous.
Right.
And because that's dangerous, that fear, it triggers physically your central nervous system.
Yep.
Where you might get sweaty and you get anxious, and your central nervous system starts to turn on all these hormonal responses that say danger, 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 danger.
Yeah.
That's what it really feels like. It feels like danger.
Yeah. Some people
And
start shaking
then
too,
we
like literally shaking.
listen to the danger.
Yeah.
We think, oh my, I shouldn't do this. And that danger then, or that fear, that danger overrides your intuition.
Yeah. That's such a good example. Yeah.
And fear will, as I said, the intuition will be more present based. In other words, it says, oh my, do this thing now, where a fear response or a trauma response will usually be anchored somewhere in the past.
Yeah.
Because it is remembering your fear, or your body is remembering something from the past that was dangerous, or that didn't feel good, or that caused you angst, or caused you some hurt and some suffering. It remembers that. It's like it reaches in and it remembers, and then it starts to send off all those signals to shut down.
Yeah. And I think everybody listening can relate to what Cindy just said, that where you feel inspired and then you feel defeated by your own thought process.
Exactly.
And that I love that, because that is definitely, it's almost like your fear response will try to talk you off the ledge, but you're not even on the ledge to begin with.
Yeah. And that's where it can get very confusing for a person, because you think, oh, well, it's like my fear is just trying to, it's really trying to help you, to protect you, but it doesn't realize that it's also sabotaging you.
Y'all know that self-sabotage, that's a big word.
Yes.
One of the human body is interesting too, and I have to be careful how I say this. So we see this a lot with, we'll just use women for an example, since we're two women. Like everybody's got that friend or knows that person that keeps dating the wrong guy, like AB, USC relationships, and they get into one, they keep repeating these patterns of going. And I know that a lot of times trauma, if you've experienced trauma, the body will also try to relive that trauma so that you can actually deal with it. And
exactly.
So you see that
like
happening.
A karmic,
yeah,
a karmic pattern, a repetition, and you might think, oh my gosh, well, God is punishing me, or the universe is punishing me. This is terrible. I can't figure things out. But it's repeating because you're repeating.
Yeah.
You see, it's not, the world isn't punishing you. It's trying to show you, well, this is repeating because you're repeating. You haven't broken past this thought pattern, or this belief system that you have about yourself, maybe not being worthy of love. If you're talking about like you said an abusive situation, these are just some examples.
Right.
If you have a repetitive thing going on within your subconscious, because a lot of times it is subconscious.
Right.
Because consciously, none of us ask to be abused.
No.
I mean, who would, consciously, we don't ask for those kind of things.
Right.
But subconsciously, we might have these programs running saying that, like you're not worthy of that kind of love. You're only worthy of this kind of love. And the repetition is happening. So it doesn't, it's like, I think Pema Chaldron said, nothing ever goes away until it teaches you what you need to learn. In other words, it will repeat until you finally integrate the teaching or the learning, or you break that cycle. Right. And sometimes again, it's subconscious. It's from fragments within your soul. Not your soul can't be fragmented, but fragments within your energetic, your psyche. Fragments within your psyche.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes that realization. Sometimes, we do have to make the same mistake over and over again before we realize what that pattern is. And I did that myself. I dated terrible guys over and over again until the last one that was awful. And I literally, before my first trip to India, and I literally just focused on, when I was in India that first time, on healing and really focused on myself. And I came back, and that's when Todd and I got together, and it's like one of the healthiest relationships I've ever been in. So there needs to sometimes be this realization that happens where you do start to observe and realize the idea of a trauma response and like a broken record, a samskara that's happening over and over, versus who you really are. I always tell people in yoga, like the whole idea of is realizing that who you think you really are isn't actually who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the whole purpose of yoga and a lot of spiritual healings is like, first of all, realizing that you're not, the ideas that you have, the story about yourself you have isn't normally the truth.
No, they're personalities just that are, again, based off of, again, thoughts and belief patterns that were developed out of times of fear, or out of times of feeling diminished, or times of suffering, and we don't want to repeat the suffering.
Right.
And the one thing I think it's important too, that when we start to go through our healing process and we go through the cycle, we're repeating stuff, and then sometimes we can beat ourselves up and say, oh my gosh, why can't I figure this out? And then we get really angry at ourselves. That's not helpful either.
That's just creating a new trauma response.
That's just creating another layer of crap on top of the crap that's already there. So beating yourself up or bullying yourself because you can't figure something out is not the way to go. But we do that. We do that to ourselves, especially in the spiritual realm. We think that we're broken. And the thing is that you're not, like, in the essence, in the heart of you, in the spirit of you, you're not broken at all. You're just having like this momentary lapse of forgetfulness.
Right. Right. Alan West talks about that a lot. Yeah. Yeah. It's no, totally. I mean, you're right, because in the yoga world, especially, you do see people kind of like bully themselves. And it's so funny because the first rule of yoga is ahimsa, which is non-violence. You know, Patanjali didn't pick peace. He picked non-violence because you know that you're going to have that reaction to kind of like bully yourself, but you have to be able to be aware of that and choose not to. You know, most of us the way we speak to ourselves, for most of us, the way we speak to ourselves is a way we would never speak to anybody else. And that's a realization in itself, is when you become your own worst enemy. And to be able to have that compassion for yourself and understand that you are whole, but you have to work to find that, you know, and to kind of sweep your house up a little bit, you know.
Well, I will say too, just because this also goes in really well to one of the ways that you can tell a difference between an intuitive response and a fear response. An intuitive hit will not be bullying.
Yeah.
It won't be shame-based. It won't play on your shame. It won't play on guilt. It won't bully you. And it won't play on any feelings of desperation. Right. Sometimes we'll confuse that, and we'll hear a voice that says, oh, no, don't do that. But the tone, the feeling tone of that voice might be extreme guilt or shame. So that comes up a lot, maybe with money. We'll feel guilty, especially people that are more in the spiritual realm, talking about having crazy fear and not a very healthy relationship with like abundance and money, especially people who've been on this path. We have this crazy relationship and idea with money, and maybe you want to offer a service and you want to charge some money for it. And then a guilt response comes in and says, no, you can't charge that. But there's an undertone of guilt. That is not your intuition. Yeah. That is a guilt framework that you're working within, or a shame framework.
Yeah. I think, because, it's so funny, because in India, my teacher in India is one of the wealthiest people in South India, and my boyfriend will tell stories of Patabi Joyce, who was his teacher, who's passed away, that if it was time for you to pay tuition, like even if you were like 50 rupees short, you had to go home and get that 50 rupees, and we do in the West, for some reason, we have this like romantic idea of being like, committed to a life of poverty because we're spiritual teachers. But there is an energy exchange when you're helping someone, you're working with somebody, you're teaching someone, you're giving them your energy. And you can't give energy without being replenished. And that tuition back, or that payment for your service back, is that replenishment for your energy. And yeah, I totally get that, because you see that all the time, especially in the yoga world, that people feel like they have to only do donation based stuff. And donation based stuff is fine too. There are some people that just do certain classes that are donation based. But yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying, because we immediately associate money with capitalism, and people have a very extreme view on that. And it's like, no, there's shades of gray there.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely shades of gray. It's not like one extreme or the other.
Right.
But yeah, so your intuition won't play on guilt. If you get a thought and there's guilt or there's shame or there's a sense of you being diminished, it won't play on your desperation either, or your naivete, if that makes sense. And I think this is a really important piece, that it's not going to play on your desperation, especially when it comes to who you listen to. This is the part of your intuition that's going to keep you from being involved in something like a bad cult or something like that.
Yeah.
Because your desperation might take you down that path.
That's a good point.
Desperation is not your intuition either. Do you see what I mean? So your intuition is not going to play on that part of yourself. And that is usually when we're praying the most too. Usually we're praying when we're desperate. We're praying when our world falls apart and we're in that dark night of the soul experience. And it's not to say that your intuitive voice won't come in at that point. It very much will, but it will have, I think, a different feeling, versus like making a decision mainly just on desperation. And then that goes into another point of the difference between intuition and trauma response. Is your intuition is usually non-emotional. So you might be in a strongly, dark night of the soul kind of a place, but your intuition will still come through more clear. It's not going to come with a strong emotion attached to it. Does that make sense? Like fear will come with a strong, like that, that anxious feeling sometimes to it. But your intuition won't. Now your intuition the voice, sometimes it can be soft, but sometimes it can be loud. Depending on the situation and how it's trying to get your attention. But it won't come with super strong emotions unless you are actually in current danger, like you're being chased by a bear. If you're being chased by a bear and your body's like, holy shit, run.
The intuition's going to yell you at that point.
Then you run.
Well, it's funny you talk about like when people are in a dark night of the soul and they're very vulnerable and they're high emotion at that point, and you talk about like high control groups. It seems too in that fear response, when we're attracted to those groups and that vulnerable, we're looking for something outside of ourselves to save us, versus sitting quietly in that uncomfortable place, in that place of vulnerability, anger, sadness, whatever, and just being able to like breathe and try to listen to that part of you that only thing that's going to save you is this, and it's crazy because you talk about these groups and people are like, oh, I would never. No, everybody is susceptible to a high controlled organization at some point, because we all have those vulnerable moments, and where we can't possibly save ourselves. We need this, David Koresh to save us. We need this, whatever this, and that's where we get in these situations, which then you get in these groups and it causes even more trauma responses and more psychological warfare. And, and so, I'm really glad you brought that up. Because
a good teacher, I think, will always redirect your power back to yourself. And that's one way you can tell. So if you're going out and you're getting involved in different groups and different communities, which is fine. I mean, you should, you shouldn't have to like go through the process all alone.
But
for me anyways, the truest, the highest teachers, I mean, they might be telling you, giving you guidance,
Right.
do this, do this, do this. But in the end, it should point you back to yourself. It shouldn't point you to some power outside of yourself to
Some
save
human,
you.
yeah, some human being that's gonna, you know, and that's funny.
Yeah, you save yourself in the end. You
Right.
have teachers and stuff that help to redirect your energy. I think that's more than anything what they do. They help to redirect where your thinking is, and to, you know, open up new ways of looking at yourself. But in the end, they're going to say, no, you, in the end, you got to save yourself. That's not going to save you.
Right. That's something that both you and Todd are really, really, really good at doing. Because we both know within every organization, there are bad apples. Like there are definitely in the yoga world some bad apples out there that like being, you know, the little leaders of their communes. But both you and Todd are really, really good at that with your students. Like you're giving your students tools through your teaching so that they can help themselves.
Yeah.
It is not, you and Todd are so good about like not getting super involved in like your clients or your students' lives beyond what you're teaching them, and having some boundaries. Like, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not, you know, I'm just here to help you with what I understand. And then you do with it as you will, because, you know, at the end of the day, the teacher can't do the work for you. You have to do the work. It's all about you. The teacher's job is to eventually not be needed, sadly. So,
yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's go into, everybody's been asking me to, and again, because both Cindy and I live our lives in the yoga world, I think I forget anyway that people just don't have this exposure like we do. Because I was shocked at how many people wanted us to review the chakra system, because we talk about this all the time. And I was like, oh, I guess, yeah, okay. I guess they don't teach that in Zumba. So I guess we gotta, so can you go over these different, and not just the chakras, any type of like energetic points in the body?
Yes.
You know?
Okay, what I would like to say, we'll get into I was thinking about this, and you know, the chakra system, it's sometimes it's the easiest reference point for us to come in and start to understand aspects of our energetic body. But one thing that I've been learning as I progress, and which I wish that I also knew a little bit earlier, and it's kind of like it's, you know, we're talking about the anatomy of your spirit, like the anatomy of your higher self.
I like that. I'm going to use that when I teach classes. I like
Yeah.
that.
So this is the anatomy of your higher self. The first vehicle, the smallest vehicle, is actually the subatomic particle of your electrons. That is the first vehicle of your spirit, is the electrons within your body. And I was reading too, just to prepare a little bit about for this talk, like how many electrons does a human body have? And it was giving some mathematical, it was like 7 times 10 to the 27th degree. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Just give me a number, just give me a hard number.
I'm like, that must be a lot. And it was like something like octillions. It was in the octillions range in an adult body. So
we think about electrons, electricity. This is like energy that, you know.
Well, it's your first, that's what electrons do.
Yeah, they move.
The electrons, they're primary carrier of electricity in your body, and they move at the speed of light, and they're quantum. They're quantum. They kind of move at the speed of light between realms in a way. You know what I mean? I don't know, you have to study quantum physics and all that. I don't know that much about that, but electrons are kind of part of, your atoms are, but you know, the electrons too are part of that realm.
The fact that
if you think of your higher self as being a vehicle, again, not just for this world, but also for your past incarnations, and all that.
Yeah,
it's the electrons, they move through those different realms.
It's wild. It's so wild. It's so cool.
So if you even just sit and meditate on all the electrons in your body, that will start to open up something way bigger. It feels different. For instance, if you just sit and think of electrons, you know, and that being the first point of your higher self versus going straight into the chakras. I mean, like feel that, like feel into that, feel into your electrons and then feel into your chakras.
Yeah. That's your mantra,
like
guys. Your mantra for the week is electron.
It has it has a different sensation to it.
Right.
So the electrons are the first point. And understanding that about the anatomy of your spirit is that it goes on a subatomic level. I think will help you understand how big or how electrifying you actually are. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like how connected you truly are to something magnificent.
Divinity.
Yeah, exactly.
That goes back to the clairs. All these, that's why you're able to see things that are beyond the veil, is because your electronic particles are living within these different realms of reality, even though your physical eyes might not see unless you are clairvoyant, you know, but it's like, that explains how that this is now scientifically possible, that we're able to have a spiritual experience in this human life. And we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So
exactly.
I'm so glad you talked about that.
Yeah, because the electrons, they have to make up every single element, because you know you're made up mainly of carbon, of hydrogen, of nitrogen, and of oxygen, right? I think those are the four main ones, and all the electrons that are running through, and then that how all that is coming together, all those elements are coming together to form the more of your biomolecular structure, like your proteins and your DNA, you know, your cells, and then the DNA within your cells and all the proteins and the fats. I mean, you're nothing but a current of pure electricity. And then I would say, you know, work through your electrons, and then through your electrons, like working through feel into all those different elements within your body, and then start to feel within like your DNA structure, because your DNA, because of all that, is also the memory of everything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can start to, but see, that's more of a refinement. If you think of the chakras are a little bit more dense than that.
Right.
When we're talking on the level of molecular structure, there's a high speed frequency to it.
Yeah.
That will just blow you right open. Almost, yeah, I feel it almost immediately just talking about it. Like everything starts to tingle in your body, not just your chakras, but everything. Suddenly you become alive with electricity. And that is the realm of your higher self. Your higher self is beyond your energy system.
Right.
Your whole entire body is filled with it. And it's your body then is literally a light body. It's an energetic light, like LIGHT, light body, with sacred geometry and all that stuff within it. You know what I mean? It's like you are like the sacred geometric jewel with all these different facets. Like if you think of a jewel or a diamond, it has all these different facets, faces, and the way we then reflect and project light, that's very individual to us, depending on how our sacred geometry is cut, I guess you can say, or formed.
Right.
So just think of yourself as electrons, as a light body, a sacred geometry vessel of pure energy, and kajillions of little energetic things moving. Then I think that will really tune you into the essence of your higher self. Right. Then you can use like your chakra systems for like if you get stuck somewhere. Right. But I think if you go straight to that geometry and to the electrons, it will blow things open almost automatically, at least for me.
Well, that makes sense, because I was telling you, you know, I'm very familiar with the chakra system just for how many years I've been in yoga, but within my actual lineage of yoga, we don't talk about the chakras that much.
Yes.
I sometimes bring it up in class, sometimes, especially in this area of the body. But, and the reason for that is, from what I understand, is that when somebody doesn't have the basis of understanding energetic body, they tend to make things worse by focusing on one specific chakra instead of understanding that they all work and one whole,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah, so I think if you understand that your whole entire body is working as a whole first,
yeah,
then you can start to work into like the other parts of the systems without tearing yourself apart. You
right,
know what I mean? Because
right.
in the end, your higher self, if that's what you're really wanting to connect with, your higher self is just pure light, that, you know, energies, again, this just beautiful, crystalline, geometric shapes that is fully illuminated. It can be different colors. Maybe it's gold, maybe it's white, maybe it's all these different colors. And
Yeah.
that will give you that sense of expansiveness from the get-go.
Right. That's kind of
I
like,
think a lot of times for us to work from that place can be more helpful than going straight to something that feels kind of small.
yeah,
Get big first,
and then
and
work down.
let that bigness show you where you need to go next, instead of letting your mind tell you where you need to go. Like, connect with the bigness. Does this make sense? Like, connect with your higher self, connect with that sacred, connect with that, and let that tell you where you need to go.
It's interesting because it kind of like, you know, in the Ashtanga practice, we do, or we did. Now in the new system, they don't teach this, but I still teach this, as you know, the Tadak Mudra, which we do it right before closing, where it's literally where you kind of squeeze your body. I'm trying to explain it to people who don't practice. You're laying on the ground and you pull everything and you squeeze your legs together. It's to neutralize your energy before you then go upside down. But they always say to think of like a swirl coming all the way up from your head to your toes. So it's like you're focusing on this moving, living, breathing energy, just cleansing and moving. And it literally will then physically pop your body back into a more conducive space, so then you can do inversions. But like, that's kind of, when you say that, that kind of seems like a great place to kind of practice feeling that sensation of everything just constantly swirling and swirling in cycles around the body.
Yes.
So you do kind of see that in the yoga practice, although the teachers might not talk about that much, but you do kind of see this practice of physically using the body to then energetically feel what you physically can't really see.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know,
Because, there is a lot of talk about the chakra system, and that they, it's useful. Obviously, there's meaning to working with them, but I think sometimes people, the way they work with them, it can make you feel small or broken down, or I don't know. Whereas if you first really just think about who you are and what you're made of and what your higher self is, it's bigger than your chakra system.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you know what I mean? So it's like you connect with that first. And again, the chakra system is it's a little bit more dense, even though it's energetic and it's light, it's more dense than your, like this, the hugeness of just being pure electricity.
Right. Yeah. And again, it comes back to like,
then the electricity can filter through your chakra system.
right. And it's kind of like with the different chakra points. Like I said, a lot of teachers, especially when they're just coming out of like teacher training and they don't have that much experience, will do things that will focus on like one specifically. And that can generate more problems because, as in everything, it works together. And I felt like the more I focused in my own practice on literally working on the body as a whole, then places I felt weak within like the chakra system got stronger. Because they all work, they don't work independent of each other. Even though they have independent purposes, they work together as one cohesive unit.
Absolutely. And sometimes we think that the lower chakras, let's say the first, the second, the third, your first chakra is your Muladhara, and it's tied to your root, feeling safe. But it's anything that makes you feel safe, like you belong, and make you feel secure. Like money issues are usually tied to the Muladhara, that's your root. Then you got the one that comes right above that, your sacral chakra, and its color is yellow, and that's the space of like sexuality, sacred sexuality, emotions, having the right to feel. And then you got your third, which is at your solar plexus, your manipura, it's yellow, and that's your place of like feeling powerful.
Right.
But the bottom three, sometimes too in the spiritual world, just depending on what groups that you travel in, they'll put these bottom three as somehow being less than.
Yeah.
Because we should be trying to transcend and come up here to the pineal, to our connection with heaven and to God and all that. But if your roots are off, it doesn't flow. This is the bottom three are the foundation, but also the bottom three is the most taboo and where we hold the most amount of shame.
Absolutely.
So in the spiritual awakening process, it will often require us to actually descend first before we ascend. It's like you need to descend. You need to come down to your roots, get muddy, get icky, get into what the energy holds within the place of like the earth, the earthly realm, and what it is to feel safe in your humanity. Like your first three are very much tied to the sense of feeling human, your instincts, your primal instincts. And we're often taught that our primal instincts are bad. They're not bad. They're part of you. They're part of what makes you human. Right. And so when we can begin to honor it and integrate the fact of that, I want to feel safe. Like I want to have money in my bank account because that makes me feel safe.
Yeah, I
want people to love me. I want people to like me. It's actually okay to say that you want people to like you, because that's actually a very primal response when you think about the people who came way before us, the Neanderthals, or when they were really in tribes. If you were left alone,
you wouldn't survive.
You didn't survive. So that's why we're tribal people.
Yeah.
And that's in your Muldahara. So it is important for your psyche to have people like you. And that's okay. Because right now the trend is like, oh, who cares what people think? And not that you should care what people think, but it is important for your well-being for people to like you, and that's okay.
And to be
it's okay to want people to like you and to have a community and to have friends and to fit in, because that satisfies that part of your primal instinct for survival as a human being, because you're human too.
Yeah.
You're not just spiritual, you're human. And that's what your human component needs. And your human component also needs to feel emotions. And that's another thing that gets squashed down. That's your sacral. Now we're talking about your sacral chakra, which is
it's red, orange, yellow.
It's red. Yeah. Then the orange, your sacral, your womb. You think of the womb space for women, or your reproductive organs are the soft kind of fleshy part of your belly,
where you feel emotion.
Your hips can feed into that as well.
Yeah.
And the element that's tied to your sacral chakra, or your second chakra, your womb space, is fluidity and water. And water is directly tied to your emotions. So having a right to your feelings.
Yeah.
And that's it's a more instinctual response. Because if we don't feel safe to feel,
then we're not safe.
Yeah, and everything kind of shuts down. But if we're not safe, period, like in other words, if we're in danger and we're in true survival mode, then your feeling won't feel either. Do you see what I mean? So your root chakra, sense of foundation and safety, then establishes the foundation to feel, because then you'll feel like it's safe to feel. And then that feeds it into your power, which is your solar plexus. And empowerment sometimes is something that's not always, I mean, I know we talk about it more these days, but feeling powerful, because sometimes we think of people who are powerful, and we think of people who always just take all the time, or they're greedy, or they're taking, like that kind of power.
Yeah, but that's not the power that's not the third chakra power. That's
Right.
like standing in who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But that's why those three specifically can really get
Ignored.
yeah, or kind of shut down or suppressed, because you know, they more linked to our humanity. And in the spiritual realm, we're trying to, you know, sometimes we think that squashing our humanity is what we should do.
Y'all
Right.
know those
Exactly.
are so not grounded. They're like pie in the sky. No part of, I will tell you, I know Cindy, I know you know this, we've been doing this for a long time. The people that are the most, I believe, are the most like getting the most advanced in their own practice are very grounded. They're very grounded. They're very human. They're very normal. They don't have, what is it? Ram Dass called it spiritual materialism, where they wear like 50,000 mala beads and like walk around going, it's so cool, man. No, people who are really usually know when they're mad, know when they're upset. They experience the human, because that's why, if you were not supposed to learn from being a human, the universe would not have made you a human. So
exactly.
So
exactly.
And as far as like wanting friends, that goes back to the beginning with trauma response and intuition. Wanting friends, when you have a healthy understanding of your intuition, you won't get into relationships that are trauma based when it comes to wanting people to like you. You'll understand, you'll have those healthy boundaries where you want people to like you who are also going to have healthy boundaries with you. So it kind of goes back to that as well. And then just accepting anybody to be your friend, whether they're manipulative or not, isn't also a sign of an imbalance there. Right. So that again goes back to the beginning with the intuition versus the trauma response and fear. So I know people talk about this as being like your own sunshine as well. And the solar plexus, where the heat comes from in your body, where the power shines through. And then you get to the heart, that's green, right? Am I correct in saying
that? Yes, the green. And when your bottom three feel more solid and stable, and I don't know, just, you know, like you feel comfortable in your own skin, let's say, which is so much of what the first three chakras are about. Again, it's about descending. Those first three, it's about like kind of coming down, descending, putting your feet into the earth, accepting this earthly incarnation. I'll say that too real quick, especially for star seeds. Some people might relate to the word star seeds. In other words, you feel like your part of your soul, your spirit belongs in another planet somewhere, like you come from another star system.
At this point, I think we all want to go to a different planet, but
I know. But then, and then we have this resistance to coming into human form, because we feel like, oh, you know, this planet and this body is kind of heavy, more than what I'm used to. And there's all of this kind of this pain and suffering, all these different emotions that I'm just not used to. So let me get the hell out of here. So we shoot up out of our body. But part of the ascending process is to descend. You need to come down first and understand the importance of being in your form, and like honoring that, and seeing it as a sacred experience within itself.
I love that. Yeah.
Then, then you can, the heart space is so much of goodness. I mean, that's the center of love, not just love that we give out to other people, but our love toward ourselves. And when you work with the energy of love, that's a very, very powerful tool. That's a very powerful energy. However, if our heart is kind of closed down or shut down because we've shut ourselves down to the energy or the frequency of love because of the things that we might have gone through, it becomes like harder to access. Then we feel like we're depleted. And when we feel depleted in the heart, then we feel like we need to take.
Right.
Like, then we feel like I don't feel full enough. So then the energy of your heart becomes like this energy. And not to say that you shouldn't have some of that, but it should be going out. It should be flowing in and out both ways. So that's when it's healthy. You want to be able to receive, absolutely. But there's a difference between just being open to receiving versus feeling so closed off that you feel like you have to take. to
Right.
receive. You see
Yeah,
what I mean? The
absolutely.
difference between
And
those two.
when we use the word love, we again we have this romantic idea of like just always giving so much to everybody else and just always, but it's also self-love to the point where again, you know boundaries. Again, you know how to
Yes.
stand in your own power and not let people
Mhm.
manipulate you. That is a form of self-love as well. And I know it's interesting because I know Cindy's experiences with backbending with people in yoga when they're having to really open this area. People, that is where you really see people having a strong visceral reaction to the feeling here. You'll even hear people like pop when they start to really open this area physically, because you do see that happening with people when they hunch down.
Yes.
Their shoulders slump over that area, and it's like this. You hear the sensations, and for yoga, we know like all disciplines of yoga that I'm aware of, you have to walk through.
Yeah.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like it is not it. You do not start off with love and light. That is many years of
No,
love.
I
It is
know. I
darkness and
mean, you have to
turmoil at
go
first.
through the muck. You have to
Mhm.
go through your own dark soul, through the own places where you suffer in your mind, the constructs. And that's what, the whole yoga, if you look through speaking of yoga, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, it's all about the mind.
Yeah.
He's saying, okay, you need to get your mind under control because that's causing all the problems,
No, I love that.
basically.
I love that. Like, dude wrote this book like 5,000 years ago or something. He's literally like, it's like the self. It's like you're your own problem. Like, really what he's saying. He was like, you're all this suffering. That's on you. That's on you, boo. Like, that's basically what he's saying. So then we move up to the throat area.
Yeah, I love this. This one always resonates the most with me because this was a big point for me to have to open up. This is where I close off, is in my throat. So I have a personal connection with the empowering yourself also through your throat and your communication, and being able to express truth and to unsuffocate your voice.
Right.
Your voice can become small or suffocated because also all these other ones, they're if they're not flowing or functioning, or things are stuck within your body, that it's hard to then like communicate your truth because you don't even know what your truth is. So it's like, oh, you can't even say it right. You know what I mean?
At that point, I heard somebody say too, it's like you see it with people when they've been, especially for women, we've been taught like, don't, say anything, kind of be very, in the South, you have to be this proper Southern lady. You see people in their jaws where they get real lockjaw. It's almost like they're taking it on the chin, because they're holding themselves back.
Yeah, and they don't even, and that's subconscious too. They don't even realize how much they've deeply programmed themselves to be quiet.
Yeah.
Don't, because if you speak your truth or if you say something that's out of line, same kind of a thing. You'll probably get punished for it, or
no one will like you. You'll say the wrong things. Yeah. You look stupid. Yeah.
Right. But when we can start to bring our throat down into our hearts, like the energy of the throat, to anchor it into your heart, then you can start to speak from more of that authentic place within you, instead of always. Well, another interesting thing about the throat is that it's the gateway between your head and the rest of you, the head and your heart and the rest of you. And I think that's interesting why is it that your throat is the gateway from
so
your
interesting
head to your heart? I mean,
yeah.
Why were we made that way?
For us to be here right now talking about what it's like to be a human being.
Exactly.
And I will say too, I know for me, when I started doing YouTube, and I still deal with this, when I have multiple recordings, my throat is very, very sore from talking so much. So it's not just not speaking. Sometimes there can be a dysfunction when you're speaking too much, when you're just, and that's a trauma response too. People who, because that's a stress response.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because your chakras, they can hold deficiencies and they can hold excess. Either way is an imbalance.
Right.
If you have an excess of throat chakra, and a lot of times an excess happens because there's a deficiency somewhere else and it's trying to make up for itself.
Yeah.
And someone with an excess throat chakra, they talk a lot. But if you've ever been around someone who's like that, there's not much power in their voice necessarily. And people who are listening won't gravitate to what they're saying, because there's actually no true energetic power in their voice. It's more like this diarrhea of the mouth that's happening.
Yeah.
And they're harder to listen to because there's no good, strong, energetic structure that's coming out of their sound.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is too a power, especially right here, it's a power of manifestation. Your voice is a power of manifestation. When you're talking about like manifesting or magic or anything like that, it starts with a frequency. Well, I mean, it begins in thoughts too, but the words you speak hold vibration, and they're almost like it's magnetic.
It's spelled, well, we call it spelling for a reason. There's
that's the spell. Yeah,
yeah,
it's magnetic. You can it's cast spelling, casting spells.
Yeah.
That's why whenever in the realm of the occult someone's casting spells, you say it out loud, right? Because there's an understanding of the power of your voice. But then again, you got to build that and you got to reclaim that. If there is no power there, or if you've shut it down, or maybe your voice is more connected to your fears or your insecurities and all that, then you're going to manifest more of that. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So it's like you got to really connect to the power of your voice to your higher, surrender your voice to your higher self instead of to your smaller self, and you'll get much bigger, brighter results.
And I will say that because I think that's a huge one that people can first start to identify with. And especially if you guys feel like your jaw getting tight at night or something, just connecting into that. So this is now the next one is my favorite one. I think it's everyone's favorite one though, who's in the spiritual world. So you want to move up to the next one?
Yes, your pineal gland, your third eye. Its color is like this beautiful indigo color, and it is tied right there to your pineal gland. And it is to be able, I mean, it is tied to an intuition in a sense, maybe like more for clear seeing. Your intuition, like your gut feeling, that's more in your gut.
Yeah.
But this is to perceive correctly. Yeah. More than anything is that when you're seeing that, and that's a big thing with Patanjali. That was what he wanted you to do in the Yoga Sutras. He basically just wanted you to clear all your muck out so that you could see and perceive clearly. Then you can make the better decisions for yourself. Yep. And that is an important aspect, like just as far as like human function of the pipe, besides being able to like see things, but just like the function of how it can really help you.
That's what Todd says all the time. The point of yoga. Todd's my boyfriend, guys. He was Todd Joyce's student. He says the point of yoga is to be able to see the truth through the illusion.
Yeah, exactly. And that's this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is also in a lot of different cultures, they believe that this is where the soul enters and exits the body as well. And so you have this special place. And I know if you like press it, there's like a point there you can press if you have a headache or something that can kind of, but this is and this is not part of the Ashtanga system I teach, but usually after people go up in their final headstand inversion and they're in like a child's position, I'll have students like focus on kind of pressing there a little bit, onto their mat. And because this is such a very physical place and a very energetic place as well. And that of course connects to
your crown. Yes. And this is your connection. It's color. Some people have it depends. Sometimes it's depicted as a violet color, but sometimes it's just like golden white.
Yeah.
Light. And your Sahasrara, it's your I think it's the 1,000-petaled lotus flower at the crown of your head. Yeah. And this is your wisdom, your knowledge, and your understanding and connection with spirit.
Yeah.
Like that, and
the baby soft
able to trust in something bigger than yourself, but then how it feeds back into you so that you can make good, wise decisions. The excess of now in the spiritual world, we are a lot focused. We're up here, and we don't always necessarily like to go to here.
These, like I said, these are the fun ones.
And so then we will be like, oh, woo, and up here and ungrounded. But the excess of the crown chakra, it's pretty, those are serious things. I mean, there are things like migraines, and again, not wanting to be connected with the rest of the world, delusions, schizophrenia, things like that are the dysfunctions. So they're big, they're mental mind dysfunctions that come from here and here. If we don't allow the chakra system or the systems, the energetic systems in our body to work together.
That's interesting. Tamara was saying how, and I know we all know this, that the powers that be like mess with our food. They put stuff into our food that's not good, and it kind of calcifies our pineal gland. And when they started doing that, we started to see a rise in like mental disorders, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia. We started to see this rise because we know the side effects of all the stuff they put in our foods now is causing very physical things to happen, like calcification of the pineal gland. And now talking about the imbalance, that's actually, we're seeing that playing out in our world, because it has, we're seeing children being diagnosed with stuff that they really shouldn't be diagnosed with at their young ages and stuff like that. And so that's super interesting. You said that. It's almost like they know.
I mean, they kind of know how to shut you down or to suppress you. You can also do one of my little favorite meditations to do, and then they do it, and it's a very common yogic thing to do. But if you do it with your eyes closed or with your eyes open, but you take your eyes and you focus it on your pineal gland. It is, you don't even have to do it long, but just depending on how well it's developed, sometimes you will start to see like crazy colors and the sacred geometry and all this stuff that's available to you that we don't often see, because it is like calcified or closed off, and we don't see what's actually in front of us. We see the truth, which the truth is beyond just our five senses too. You know what I mean? It's like being able to perceive I don't know, just how alive everything really is.
This is going to sound, guys, I'm not suggesting you all go home and do this. I'm just using this as an example, but people who participate in like magic mushrooms, they're able to then open up a part where they're seeing vibrations, they're seeing things coming off of the plants. Again, this is not me telling you guys to do this. This is just an example, but yeah, they can all of a sudden see stuff. And we do, and in Ashtanga especially, we have like 9 different focal points, and you do start to practice being able to actually move the eyes around. And one of them is looking up and being able to kind of work out, exercise your eyes in a way to be able to see beyond the world that is we see already. And we talked about this on Sunday. We're taught we have 5 senses, but our ancient ancestors were taught 10 senses. And I know obviously intuition is one, going to the bathroom is one. I can't remember all of them, but there is more than 5 senses that we have been kind of chipping back and taking that away. And and I do think, and I know, Cindy, we've talked about this, we're going into the age of Aquarius, into a different timeline. And I'm seeing such a huge influx of people wanting to understand this. Will you tell my audience where they can find you? I'm going to place all of Cindy's links in the description box below as well. And what upcoming workshops or seminars that you have coming that if they were interested in coming and learning more from you.
Well, of course I do yoga. This is actually the space. I'm actually in the yoga studio right now. This is the space that we do it in. And most of the classes right now, not all of them, but most of the classes are run hybrid. So we offer them Zoom and in studio. But when I teach the classes, it's important to understand the movement of the body, like why you're moving the body. It's not just for exercise, it is, but you have to understand now that your body is a sacred vessel for the divine. Your body and your mind are sacred vessels for that higher, deeper intelligence. And if your body is clogged up, then it will be difficult tune into the voice or the connections of your intuition. So it's unclogging the body and working the central nervous system. That's another piece about when we're talking about being able to tell the difference between an intuition and fear. A way for you to work better toward that is clear your central nervous system.
Yeah.
Okay, because if your central nervous system, if it's very easily triggered, then it's going to play on your fears a lot more.
Absolutely.
Okay, so things like when you hear things of like yoga or just moving the body, that's why it's also a spiritual practice, because your body is a sacred vessel, your mind is a sacred vessel.
Right.
But these are some of the things that I talk about too when I teach class, because sometimes you're like, yoga, I don't want to stretch.
No, y'all, we're not making pretty postures.
Spiritual, and how's that helping me anything when I stretch the body? But you got to understand that your body is an Akashic record.
You're opening up like different, almost like portals, like called bayous, pathways that are giving you information. It honestly, guys, these pretty yoga postures aren't just for shits and giggles for Instagram.
They're not. And sometimes they'll cause you to break down. You don't know why. You start crying. You're like, what's happening to me?
Most of the time, myself included, I'm sure Cindy included, the practice isn't pretty like you see on Instagram. It can be quite, actually ugly yoga is sometimes the most powerful yoga, because that's when you're really digging deep, and it takes a while to really understand the function. So yeah. And the good thing about hybrid, if those who are watching that don't live in the state of Georgia or don't live close, you can sign up for Cindy's classes online and take her classes via Zoom. Just make sure that you're looking at the time zone, because we are on the East Coast, we're on Eastern Standard Time. So it matches your time zone, because then you can actually take a class with Cindy. If you live in California or Canada or in another country, you can actually sign up and take one. Yeah.
So that is one thing, the yoga, that's probably the most basic entry level to what I do. And then if you want to delve deeper, I'm also an energy practitioner. And because we're talking about intuition, again, I'm a feeler, I'm a knower. And since I've been working with bodies for so long, because I've been teaching yoga for a long period of time, I've also received, Reiki masters and then shamanic healing practices. I'm from Peru, by the way, so I have a very strong lineage to my Andean roots. So a lot of shamanic practices that I include with working with people individually to try to untap what's in the subconscious.
I've worked with her, guys. She's good. I've worked with her. She's good. She's good. So
it's like for me specifically, I like to go through the body because I love the body. So I'll go through the body, and I can do it Zoom too. I usually go through my body to go through your body, because I am a feeler. It's like I'll feel into my body to feel into your body. But anyways, then through there we can find if there's any like fragments, or psych fragments, places that we want to pull back in, make you whole. And again, that's all part of the awakening process. So I do individual work like that with people who just need some, because we all need some help, because we don't know what's subconscious. You know what I mean? That's why, that's the reason it's subconscious.
Yeah, we have no idea.
It's there.
It's like that junk drawer we never opened.
Conscious, we would know it, but it's the subconscious stuff that really causes all sorts of havoc within your bodies. So yeah, I can go in and do that kind of work individually. And then I am running a program that I'm starting August 21st, but this is more for in-house and it's very limited, but this is like kind of the things that I like to do. It's called Ascension, and I work with the archetypes of different, I'm very, I have a love for the different the archetypes of the goddesses, like Isis and Mother Magdalene and even Mother Mary and Kali, even Medusa. She's like sacred rage. But anyways, working through the archetypes to help us with the ascension. That's the name of the course, is Ascension. But it's the same kind of thing that we were talking about. We have to go through our body and recognize that we are holy vessels. And that again, that's limited to 6 people. It's only going to be in-house. But that's starting on August 21st, if there's.
And I'll put that down below, guys, because if you do live nearby and you do want to come and participate, and again, I know you said Sunday to me off camera that you want it to be an intimate group. And so for people that
because I do initiations too, like the goddess archetypes will come in. I'm like just a channel, a vessel for their energy. They'll come in and work through. And when I do healing sessions or energetic healing sessions, the same thing kind of happens. Sometimes Mother Mary will come in for someone who needs some of that loving mother work. She'll come in and help to do the work that you need to do.
Sweet.
So,
well, and for people who may be a little bit hesitant, like that fear is coming up as we talked about it being in a vulnerable place, I will tell you with Cindy, she's the safest person for you to work with. She keeps everything, it's very private. And if you do one-on-one healing, it is obviously with just you and Cindy, and nothing that comes out ever leaves the room ever. That would, as professionals, that's part of our assignment is to keep it very private. And if you want to do the group setting, because she wants it to be small, then you wouldn't be in a huge group of people. It'd be a very small group of women. It's just women you're working with, or is it?
Not necessarily. It's not always them. Even though we're working with female archetypes, they work with
men as well. Yeah.
Men need the love just as much as the women do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend, I'll say Janine, she reads tarot cards, and she talks a lot about the goddess energy as well. And I have to say Mr. T, because we can't say his name on YouTube, but when she pulls his card, it's always the goddess card, because even as alpha as he is, he has a feminine, like there's a feminine energy to him. So yes, men and women do carry both the elements of feminine and masculine. Absolutely. And maybe in the West, we're kind of disconnected from that, but that doesn't mean if you're an alpha male, it doesn't mean that you can't tap into the softness of a female, or female. You can't have the alpha from time, and it's a flowing ebb and flow of energy. So yeah, absolutely. So, and you also have a YouTube channel that you started.
I just now resurrected it though. I had a whole 2 brand new videos on there. And
I'll link it below, and I'll send you this as well.
Sacred Garden Yoga is the name of the YouTube channel.
I'll put that below, guys.
A little small, but yes, I plan on adding more to it for sure.
And I'll send you this too as well. But yeah, guys. So if you follow Cindy on Instagram as well, she's way more active on her Instagram than I am, but she's constantly posting like beautiful things, kind of like daily things to think about, to kind of meditate on. And so I will share her Instagram as well, so you can kind of follow along and get these little nuggets of information. So, and if you guys have any questions, you can always message me as well, because Cindy is the guest on this channel that I'm friends with in real life.
I know, yay.
In this world, in this YouTube world, all of my YouTube friends, I feel like I know them in real life, but we haven't had a chance to hang out in real life. But believe it or not, I knew Cindy long before I did YouTube. So
I know.
So yes. I can vouch for her. If you have any questions, you can always ask me too, and I can put you in contact with Cindy as well. So, well, thank you, Cindy. I'm so happy you got to do this today. I know everybody's gonna be so excited, because this has been one of the most requested topics out of all the topics. That this has been so requested. So I appreciate you coming on.
It was so much fun.
I know.
I love talking about this stuff. So
yeah. I know I'm a nerd too when it comes to this stuff. I don't think that people, because I'm always like talking about like weird stories, French topics, truth or stuff. Yeah. But this is the other side of it. This is the other side of the things that I love too, is like talking about this energetic body and this, who are we really? And, of course, everybody knows my in real life job is yoga. So I'm so happy that I got to have you come back on again. We'll have you come back on again as well to do some follow-up stuff. So yeah, in fact, I'm going to put out there right now, if there's anybody out there that has a specific question for Cindy, just like we do with Tamara and Tarot by Janine, any specific questions you have for Cindy, send them in to me or put them in the comment section below, and then we'll schedule another time to cover those questions.
Would love it.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
All right, guys. I'll see y'all later. Bye.